review because we've covered 350 years of Judges, and we have approximately 1,380 years before Christ to 1,043 years before Christ. So a long time ago. And we have been looking at the settlement of the Promised Land by the 12 tribes. And this is the second of what are called the historical books of the Bible. That is starting with Joshua. And we looked at the 12 tribes as they're settling into and failing to drive out the inhabitants of the Promised Land, which is causing serious problems. But not only the serious problems of the neighbors that they have that lead them astray, but their own self-will. And so we see the failure of 7 tribes out of the 12 in detail as they fail to drive out the inhabitants and as each man seems to do what is right in his own sight. So we have serious problems going on here. 7 of the tribes failing to drive out the inhabitants are detailed, and we have 13 of the 15 judges that are given names in this section of the book of Judges. Who are the extra 2 judges that are not covered in the book of Judges? Well, one is Eli and the second one is Samuel, which are both covered in the book of 1 Samuel. So we have an interesting time, and as we brought to a conclusion the names of the judges that are listed here in the book of Judges, we saw Samson bringing the house down all over a haircut. Well, nevertheless, it seems that the writer of Judges, who's probably Samuel, has decided to now show us examples of what is right in the eyes of each man and how they failed to follow God's standards. And the first example that he gives us is found in chapter 17, and it continues all the way through chapter 18, which is the item of idolatry. Now, idolatry is quite interesting because in idolatry, we tend to worship something other than a living and true God. And it can be anything. It can be a material thing. It can be a person. It can be a habit. It can be a ritual. It can be a graven image. We wind up worshiping even an activity that becomes dominant in our lives and takes the place of God in our lives. And so we see that it's real easy to slip off into idolatry and to get involved in things that take the place of God in our lives. And so today, before we look at chapter 17 and 18 tomorrow, I want you to just take a minute to think with me now. Has someone, some activity, some object become an idol in your life? Now remember, it's an activity, a person, a thing. Have they become an idol in your life? Are they becoming an idol in your life? Are you becoming superstitious? And do you tend to put more value in these things, these people, these places, these activities than you place with God? Could be something as simple as fishing, hunting. Could be as simple as something like a car, a boat. Could be as simple as a house. Could be simply an activity. I remember my wife sharing on a couple of occasions that tennis had become an idol in her life, that tennis was all important, and it sometimes took the place of the time that she knew she should be spending with God. And so it's easy for even an activity. It's easy to idolize a person, your mate. And so we want to think about that for a minute today, and I hope that you will. And I hope if there's something that's becoming an idol, something that's taking the place of your time with a living God, that you'll get rid of it or at least minimize it so that God has his proper place in your life. And that's my thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day. Well, how can you be sure you're going to heaven? My son said I should never end a message without telling people how they can be sure they're going to heaven. You can find it easily in just a few verses in the book of Romans. Romans 3:23 says, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Sin is anything that's displeasing to God. We all sin every day. By unclean thoughts, a quick answer to someone that's inappropriate, whatever it might be, we all sin and we all fall short of the glory of God. And we know that the wages of sin are death. Romans 6:23 tells us that clearly. The wages of sin are death. We're all guilty of sin and we all deserve death. In Romans chapter 5, verse 8, it says, God demonstrated his love for us that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. That's it. That's exactly how God showed his love. He allowed us to see that Jesus Christ, God in the flesh, died for us and rose again to prove that he had the power over death. Now watch this. How do we obtain this? It's one thing to know it. You can have it here in your head, but not down in your heart. Here's how we obtain it. If we confess and believe in our heart God has raised him from the dead, we will be saved. And it says believing, it's considered righteousness, not our own righteousness, but Christ's righteousness. With our mouth we confess. And it says, and when we confess, it results in salvation. In verse 13, it goes on and says, whoever will call upon the Lord shall be saved. So if you've confessed your sin and said, yes, Lord, I'm a sinner. Lord, I know that you died for my sins. I'm going to turn from sin and self and to you alone. Then you can know for certain, if you really meant it, then you know that you have eternal life in heaven. I hope that you've prayed a prayer similar to that you've acknowledged Christ as your Savior, that you've invited him into your life to be your Lord and your Master, that you've turned from sin and self and received him to be the Lord of your life. And that's my prayer for you. Remember, at the end of this clip, there's an opportunity for you to see the last lesson that we had, and also a clip that says how you can have peace in a broken world with the 3-circle illustration. It's a wonderful witnessing tool to share with others if they don't know Christ as Savior, and to see how God fixed a broken world. God bless you and have a great day.